It's been nearly 2 months since the new year has come, and the 1st of January has all been but forgotten. And with that came all of the inevitable New Year's resolutions. This year, I'm going to study every single day. Or this year, I'm going to get fit. Or perhaps this year, I'm going to learn a new language. Speaking of languages, I'd like you all to close your eyes. Let's take a walk down Hounslow High Street. It's busy, with multilingual signs everywhere and food from all over the world. Around you, there's constant chatter in all languages, and that's in the foreground, with the background of intermittent car horns and a periodic roar of planes. Please reopen your eyes. Being in such close proximity to Heathrow Airport, we're at the gateway to London. We're home to speakers of over 120 different languages in our borough alone. And yet, in spite of such cultural and linguistic diversity, I mean, after all, it's often considered a cliche to say that diversity is so important to us in here. And despite all of that, only 30% of us can speak another language. And most of these people who can speak another language are first-generation immigrants. Why aren't there more of us speaking other languages? Of course, it is important to mention the other people who have varying levels of ability in a different language. Some are passive speakers, some just know enough to say, I'm hungry, or some are illiterate in the language. But either way, this is a hugely underutilized resource that we have at our hands. Moreover, the traditional European languages, such as French, German, and Spanish, comprise only under 1% of speakers of foreign languages in Hounslow each. The British Council argues, and I quote, "The UK has fallen behind by not devoting sufficient time, resources, and effort to language learning." Are any of you familiar with the term use it or lose it? Well, languages can often be compared as such. Let's face it, 5 years of je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes simply won't cut it. See, I have many friends who've done French GCSE, and yet most of their best sentences in the language is parlez-vous anglais? That means, do you speak English? Having spent several years in the UAE, where Arabic is the official language, yet English is used as a lingua franca, I've always wondered why we had to study Arabic if we would never use it. I thought it would be pointless, but of course I later realized that I was completely wrong. But even then, that makes me wonder about here at Hounslow. As Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language that he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to a man in a language, in his own language, that goes to his heart. And so I'd like us to think about this quote. Whilst French, German, and Spanish are incredibly useful today, and are especially useful if you're going on holiday, what about elsewhere? What about here at home? What about if we go farther away than Western Europe? In a world that's slowly but steadily globalizing, French, German, and Spanish, while wonderful languages with a rich history and literature, they aren't the only language that we should be learning. You know, there are many second to third generation immigrants today, including myself, who can't or may have not been able to in the past communicate fully with their grandparents purely due to the language barrier. And whilst Britain and Hounslow is all of our home, I think it's important that we make sure that we keep our ties to other countries. And regardless of China and India's superpower status as they rise, our world is becoming more and more integrated, and our focus should not just be only on the new superpowers. And maybe we should move away from the idea that we should learn, say, Mandarin Chinese purely for the idea of good business in the future. Maybe we should try and see that language is something that's so much more than that. Languages, they're a medium in which we communicate. They're a medium in which writing is written, a way in which we laugh, we talk, we watch films, history, culture, all of that is embedded in it. There's so much more to a people than just their accent and the food that they eat sometimes. So much more to a language than just reciting conjugation tables. So let's do what we can to preserve the existing linguistic heritage that we have here at Hounslow. In fact, why don't not only just preserve the linguistic heritage, but let's also try and further it. Let's teach our languages to our neighbours and learn those of our neighbours and aim to understand those who live near us. Let's use the advantage that we have forward in having such cultural diversity where other places in Britain would not, and let's lead Britain the way forward. And let's become more acquainted with not only the world, but our families and our friends, the person down the road, the person at the bookshop, even just the signs you were reading in Hounslow High Street. So, in Punjabi, Sat Sri Akal, or if you speak Arabic, Ma'a Salama, Chinese, Zaijian. And I do hope that you will consider trying to further the linguistic heritage that we have. Thank you.